Hi fellow readers, this is Amreen and welcome to Read a Day Club and welcome to my very first reading review. Now I'm only just starting the video. I don't know how it's going to pan out. All I do know is that I'm hoping to divide the book, the Symposium by Plato, into probably 3 to 4 different sections, and I'll add timestamps for each one. Now, let me tell you why I've decided to do this. To be honest, Plato is a very intimidating philosopher, at least to someone like me who's only just begun to appreciate this sort of literature. So, and the reason why my first Plato is the Symposium, because look how tiny the book is. So anyway, I've not yet started the book. I mean, I've read the preface and introduction so far. I actually started by watching this video on YouTube, The Philosophy of Love by the Philosophical Research Society. It's an hour-long video, and it's such a great and insightful introduction to what the book is about, what platonic love actually means. So I'm going to leave the link to that video in the description box. I watched the video and I think we should all do this. You know, anyone who's intimidated by philosophers like Plato, then there's Aristotle, there's Kierkegaard, Descartes. You know, these videos by professors, they really elevate your understanding and give you the confidence you need to read their work. So anyway, I watched the video, and after that I read the introduction, and everything just came together. Everything just fit. Okay, so the introduction is divided into multiple sections, right? So in the beginning, it's actually it's the whole description of what the symposium is about and in what setting does it take place, right? So what's the symposium about? It's a private dinner party where a group of men, you know, they gather to talk about love. What is love? Okay, and these men are, I've written their names somewhere at the back. Where is it? Okay, so the names are Phaedrus, Pausanias, Eryximachus, Aristophanes, Agathon, Socrates, and Alcibiades. Now, and then there's this whole conventional setting of the symposium. The andron was a square room with a raised floor on all sides, on which were arranged typically between 7 and 11 couches. Guests reclined on the couches, usually two to a couch, leaning on cushions with their left elbows, leaving their right hands free to eat and drink from low tables in front of them. Okay, so blah blah blah. This whole arrangement promoted reciprocal conversation or song around and across the square. Wine and taking turns in song or speech. Alright, this whole thing. So the whole context created a sealed and privileged space in which the attention of the guests was focused on each other and on their shared enjoyment of wine, talk, music, and sensuality. Erotic company was provided by female courtesans and sometimes their male equivalents, who served as musical entertainers and escorts. Their erotic role at the symposium seems to have been more or less explicit flirtation rather than sexual intercourse, which might have occurred later. Okay, now in another section of the introduction, I read, where is that? Right. Plato's overall aim is to construct out of partly historical materials a kind of drama whose organizing principles are philosophical and not factual. So the talk about love is philosophical, which makes me even more curious to read this book. But the purpose of the fiction is not invention for its own sake, but to promote, through representation, the continuing search for knowledge of objective truth. On the one hand, they imply that all human beings have some sort of grasp, belief, though not knowledge, of ethical truth. On the other, it is implied that this grasp is partial and perspectival compared to prophetic insight, and that dialectical understanding is needed to bring this grasp closer to real knowledge. Right, so after this, you have the whole introduction to all the speeches. Hi again, a day later and 3 speeches down. So, so far, so good. So the story starts with Socrates heading to the symposium hosted by Agathon to celebrate the victory of his Agathon's first tragedy. Now, the narrator of the story is not someone who was present at the time of the dinner party. Rather, he is someone who has heard about all these speeches firsthand through Aristodemus, Socrates' friend and one of his lovers, who obviously did attend the symposium. Okay, so it's Eryximachus who proposes the topic for the nightly discussion. Okay, so let me find that page. Yeah. The poets have composed hymns and paeans to other gods, but none of them has ever composed a eulogy of love, though he is such an ancient and important god. Perhaps that's not so very surprising, but I once found a book by a clever writer in which salt gets amazing praise for its beneficial properties. And you can find encomia. I think this word also means eulogy, to many other such things. It's terrible that people have given serious attention to subjects like that, but nobody to this day has yet had the courage to sing the praises of love as he deserves. Such a great god and so neglected. Okay, so Phaedrus speaks first. So he says that after chaos, 2 things came into existence: earth and love. I would claim that there is no greater benefit for a young man than a good lover, and none greater for a lover than a good boyfriend. Neither family bonds nor public status. What is it? Okay, neither family bonds nor public status nor wealth nor anything else is as effective as love in implanting something which gives lifelong guidance to those who are to lead good lives. What is this? A sense of shame at acting disgracefully and pride in acting well. Without these, no individual city can achieve anything great or fine. Now, let me explain the context first, which I read in the introduction. Okay, right. So a marked feature of the symposium, as of other early and middle Platonic dialogues, is the emphasis on sexual or at least erotic relations between males. Hence, lover and boyfriend, both are male. So there's a lot of homoerotic attraction. And now my impression of the excerpt I just read, Phaedrus' speech, is that what Phaedrus is trying to say is that the lover, who is the older man, achieves greater sexual pleasure than the boyfriend, who typically is the younger one. So he's in it for the wisdom. Okay, and then they move on to Pausanias. I don't think our project has been specified properly, Phaedrus, in that we've been told simply to praise love. If love were a single thing, this would be fine. But in fact, it isn't. And since it isn't, it's better to define in advance which type we should praise. I'll try and put things right by stating first which love we should praise, then giving the god the praise he deserves. Okay, so Pausanias talks about heavenly love and common love. He says that not every kind of love and loving is done in the right manner. So there's common love that inferior people feel, that is an attraction to the body instead of the mind. And then heavenly love is more drawn to intelligence, and so it lasts forever, since it's more constant. Unlike the fleeting beauty of the body that blooms one day but then eventually fades away. Okay, and then the next one is Eryximachus. This is what I think. Pausanias started his speech well but did not carry it through to a proper conclusion. So I should try to complete his line of argument. I think he drew a good distinction in saying there are two kinds of love. But love is not only expressed in the emotional responses of human beings to beautiful people, but in many other types of responses as well. In the bodily responses of every sort of animal, in plants growing in the earth, in virtually everything that exists. Now, Eryximachus's area of expertise is medicine, since he's a doctor. He continues, it's generally agreed that bodily health and disease are different states and dissimilar from each other. When things are dissimilar, the objects of their desire and love are dissimilar. Therefore, love is different in the case of a healthy and a diseased body. Then he says that he should be able to take the most antagonistic elements in the body and create friendship and love between them. The most antagonistic elements are opposites, such as cold and hot, bitter and sweet, dry and wet, and so on. Right, so what Eryximachus is saying, that only when two kinds of love, that is heavenly love and common love, only when they come together and unite in harmony can anything meaningful or valuable be established. So these were the first three speeches, and you know, it's amazing how there's so much depth and reading between the lines in just 19 to 20 pages or so. Now later today maybe I'm going to read another 20 pages, and I'll talk about that tomorrow. So here I am again. It's been a little over, where's my clock? Yeah, 24 hours since my last recording, and I'm done with speeches by Aristophanes and Agathon. Now, so let's start with Aristophanes. He says that first we must learn about human nature before talking about love. Okay, so I'm just going to read an excerpt. First of all, you must learn about human nature and what has happened to it. Long ago, our nature was not the same as it is now, but quite different. For one thing, there were three human genders, not just the present two, that's male and female. There was also a third one, a combination of these two. Now its name survives, although the gender has vanished. Then androgynous was a distinct gender as well as a name, combining male and female. Now nothing is left but the name, which is used as an insult. And then he talks about the shape of each human being. And now this one's very interesting, and it's really very funny. Okay, so for another thing, the shape of each human being was a rounded hole with back and sides forming a circle. Each one had 4 hands and the same number of legs, 2 identical faces on a circular neck. They had one head for both the faces, which were turned in opposite directions, 4 ears, 2 sets of genitals, and everything else was as you would imagine from what I've said so far. They moved around upright as we do now in either direction as they wanted. When they set off to run fast, they supported themselves on all their 8 limbs and moved quickly round and round, like tumblers who do cartwheels by keeping their legs straight as they go round and round. Okay, then he says that these humans had great ambitions and they climbed up to heaven to attack the gods. So Zeus, the god of thunder, feels threatened and offended. So Zeus and the other gods discuss what to do to them and couldn't decide. The gods didn't see how they could kill them, wiping out the human race with thunderbolts as they'd done with the giants. If they did that, the honors and sacrifices the gods received from them would disappear. But they couldn't let them go on behaving outrageously. After much hard thought, Zeus had an idea. I think I have a plan by which human beings could still exist but be too weak to carry on their wild behavior. I shall now cut each of them into two. They will be weaker and also more useful to us because there will be more of them. They will walk around upright on two legs. If we think they're still acting outrageously and they won't settle down, I'll cut them in half again so that they move around hopping on one leg. Now this might sound familiar because we all refer to love as finding our other half. And this is the myth where the notion of becoming one with the person we love, that innate desire of human beings for each other, comes from. Alright. Our human race can only achieve happiness if love reaches its conclusion, and each of us finds his loved one and restores his original nature. Okay, then we have Agathon's speech, and this one's very short. There is only one right way of making a eulogy, whatever the topic, and that is to define the nature of the subject of the speech and the nature of that for which he is responsible. So in the case of love, the right thing is to praise his nature first and then his gifts. So Agathon talks of love as this god full of peace, friendship, seeking softness of character. That's where he settles and stays. Love does not do injustice. Love does not use force. Love is kind. Love is gracious, and for the whole company of gods and humans, love is the most beautiful and best of leaders. With Agathon, with the speeches by Aristophanes and Agathon, we finished half of the book, and the remaining half is the speech delivered by Socrates, and it only makes sense that makes up most of the remaining half, since Plato was so fond of him. But I'll reserve that for later. Alright, so honestly speaking, I don't think that Plato's Symposium is an intimidating read, so I don't know why I made such a big deal about it in my head. But I feel like you only have to read in order to get over that anxiety of not understanding such philosophers. And while I'm reading it, which surprisingly, this book is very easy to read. So while I'm reading it, I understand that, okay, I may have to read it once, I may have to read it maybe once again, but eventually I do get there, I do understand. But in this book, it does feel like it's easy to understand. Language is simple, the theme and structure of the book is simple. So yeah, moral of the story, it's not an intimidating read. By the way, this is some good tea. I don't know why I just did that. I don't think we can take any of this. Or maybe we can, I don't know. I'm just blabbering, which I love to do when I'm talking about books. Although it doesn't seem that way, but I really can talk about books for a really long time. And if you think I'm the chatty one, you should really talk to my sister. She can go on and on about books. Yeah, I mean, you have to ask her to shut up. No, but I wouldn't want her to shut up. Who's that? Okay, so it's recording. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to read the final paragraph of this book on video. Okay. I've not read it yet. It's the first time I'm reading it myself. It's very short. I don't know why I'm making a big deal about it. Anyway, it's recording. So after getting them off to sleep, Socrates got up and went off. Aristodemus followed him as usual. Socrates went to the Lyceum, had a wash, spent the rest of the day as he did at other times, and only then in the evening went home to bed. Quite an uneventful concluding stanza, but it's in no way reflective of the heavy character of Socrates' speech. So hi again, and I'm so glad you've stuck around till the end. Alright, so here's the truth and nothing but the truth. Whoever came up with the phrase last but not least must have certainly read the Symposium, because the final speech, the last one, the one delivered by Socrates, is just mind-blowing. Okay, so I'll tell you how it begins. So Socrates asks, is it love's nature to be love of something or nothing? But suppose I'd asked the question whether a father is father of someone or not. If you'd wanted to give the right answer, you'd surely have said that a father is father of a son or daughter. Then he says, does love desire what it is love of or not? When he desires and loves, does he have in his possession what he desires and loves or not? Surely it's not just probable but necessary that desire is directed at something you need, and that if you don't need something, you don't desire it. Okay, so love and desire is love and desire for something you need but don't have, right? Yeah. So okay, so this sounds more like you don't really love the person for who they really are. Rather, you love them because they bring a certain something into your life, something you didn't have but desired. Okay, and then Socrates talks about, he says that we only love beautiful things, and I think that makes a lot of sense, because ultimately it's beauty in our lives that's always missing, that always seems to get away from us. So we always desire to get it back through the act and feeling of love. So Socrates asks, it follows that love needs beauty and doesn't have it. So let's just nip this in the bud for just a moment, okay? Because now there's the heavy weightlifting bit. There is Diotima's dialogue with Socrates. Now, who is Diotima? Another Greek philosopher, female, and she was the teacher of Socrates. And this is very amazing, because Diotima taught Socrates and Socrates taught Plato. Okay, so what she thinks about love, right? So she says that love is this great spirit who carries messages from the humans to gods, and from the gods to humans, sort of like an intermediary that also exists between wisdom and ignorance. And then she talks about the part that we nipped in the bud earlier, about how is love of only beautiful things. What is it that we desire from these beautiful things? So Socrates says that they become his own. She says, what will he get when good and beautiful things become his own? Socrates, he'll be happy. So she says, it's the ownership of good and beautiful things that makes people happy, and you don't need to ask the further question, why does someone want to be happy? This answer seems to mark the end of the inquiry. So the point she's trying to get at, I think, is that the object of love is always beauty and good things, and not the bad and ugly. And that's when the object and function of love become reproduction, giving birth, both in body through sexual intercourse and in mind through achieving immortality. And why is reproduction the object of love? Because reproduction is the closest mortals can come to being permanently alive and immortal. If what we agreed earlier is right, that the object of love is to have the good always, it follows that we must desire immortality along with the good. It follows from this argument that the object of love must be immortality as well. Now, to be honest, I read Diotima's dialogue with Socrates twice actually, simply because I found it so fascinating. There's this underlying psychological element to the whole thing, that it sort of compels you to look at love for what it really is and not what we make it up to be. Okay, and then you have the final speech by Alcibiades. Now, after Socrates and Diotima, it's like, why even bother, right? No, but he has a lot of interesting. Things to say. He holds Socrates in high regard. He says that he can't even think of praising anyone, be it God or human, in front of Socrates. So he takes this opportunity at the symposium where everyone's talking about love to talk about his love, to talk about Socrates, to sort of declare how much he loves Socrates for making him a better, wiser person, even though the whole process of absorbing that knowledge, that philosophy, that wisdom was and still is difficult for him. My experience is that of someone bitten by a snake. They say that someone who's had this experience is only prepared to say what it's like to those who've been bitten themselves, because they're the only ones who'll understand and make allowances if the pain drives you to do and say shocking things. I've been bitten by something more painful still, and in the place where a bite is most painful, the heart or mind or whatever you should call it, I've been struck and bitten by the words of philosophy, which cling on more fiercely than a snake when they take hold of a young and talented mind and make someone do and say all sorts of things. When I first read this bit, it reminded me of this phrase, if you don't like your reflection, don't look in the mirror. I don't know if it's relevant or not. I just thought I should share that with you. So anyway, finally we've reached the end of this video. My thoughts, once again, the Symposium is not an intimidating read. You have to make that extra effort to read the full introduction, which is very lengthy, and to also watch the video I mentioned at the start of my video. I think it's in the first timestamp. But once you do that, there's no chance that you won't understand at least the gist of this book and the philosophy of love. Take it from someone like me, who's never formally studied literature or philosophy as one is supposed to in order to understand these kinds of texts. So anyway, thank you so much for still watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed my new reading review format and all the discussion about the philosophy of love and what love really means. I thoroughly enjoyed reading the Symposium, and I certainly intend on doing more of these for such complex philosophers, authors, writers. So let me know what you think, and also let me know if you have any specific book that you would like me to do a reading review on. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day. That was a bad joke. It wasn't a joke. I really hope you have a lovely day. All right, bye.